If I take time and I write down all the things that I love on my island, best believe my list gon' be like 5 miles long. Best believe it's love that makes me sing this song. The cleanest breeze on the waters, friendly people meet in every corner. Togetherness and love is what we stand for. We stand for. We stand for.
Oh, island in the sun, look at how we've grown, how far we've run. 50 years we strong and more to come. More to come. More to come. We're going higher. 50 years we're blessed, we're forged in fire. Still reaching for more. Going up, going up, 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 up. Going up, going up, going up, 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 up.
We're going higher. Going higher. As we aspire, build advances, put people together.
Bang, bang, bang.
It's only up from
We take time to reminisce on the richness of our history from the beginning. From the people who came through sugar and change, emancipation, the revolution. More than the speck up on the globe, more than the ice cream and gold, much more than the nutmeg and the clove. Tell the world we are Grenadians. Oh.
3 islands united as one, blessed with the strength to carry on. We're more than just that island in the sun. Tell the world we are Grenadians.
Higher, 50 years we're blessed, we're forging fire.
Oh, you mean?
We going up, going up, going up, 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 going up, going up, going up, 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 up. Aspire, build advances, want people together. Going up, going up, going up, 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 up. Going up, going up, going up, 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 up.
Really and truly, can't find the words to describe what my country mean to me. So much things we take for granted, but so much things they give to me.
Peace and tranquility, family, community. It no matter where we go in the world, just know that home is where my heart is.
50 years, as he shake for 50 more, as he shake.
See the vision clear, sing it out and let the people hear.
Look at how we've gone and how far we've come.
50 years we strong and more to come. More to come. More to come. It's only up from here.
More, more, more. Higher,
Like that.
higher.
I know you. I know you.
It's only up. We're going higher.
50 years we're blessed with fortune fire. Still reaching for more. Going up, going up, 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 up. Going up, 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 up. Going up, 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 up.
We make the Carico Pity Matnik.
Going higher. 50 years we're blessed with forged in fire. Still reaching for more. Going up, going up, 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 up. Going up, going up, going up, 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 up.
We're going higher. Going higher. As we aspire, build advances, put people together.
Bang, bang, bang.
It's only up from
We take time to reminisce on the richness of our history from the beginning.
If I take time and I write down all the things that I love on my island, best believe my list gon' be like 5 miles long. Best believe it's love that makes me the waters. Friendly people meet in every corner. Togetherness and love is what we stand for. We stand for. We stand for.
Oh, island in the sun. Look at how we've grown, how far we've run. 50 years we strong and more to come. More to come. More to come.
We're going higher. 50 years we're blessed, we're forged in fire. Still reaching for more.
Going up, going up, 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 up. Going up, going up, going up, 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 up.
We're going higher. Going higher. As we aspire, build advances, put people together.
Bang, bang, bang.
It's only up from
We'll take time to reminisce on the richness of our history from the beginning. From the people who came through sugar and change, emancipation through revolution.
More than the speck up on the globe. More than the ice cream and gold. Much more than the nutmeg and the clove. Tell the world we are Grenadians.
Three islands united as one, blessed with the strength to carry on. We're more than just that island in the sun. Tell the world we are Grenadians.
Higher. 50 years we're blessed, we're forged in fire.
Oh, you mean?
We going up, going up, going up, 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 going up, going up, going up, 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 up. Aspire, build advances, want people together. Going up, going up, going up, 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 going up, going up, going up, 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 up.
Really and truly, can't find the words to describe what my country mean to me. So much things we take for granted, but so much things they give to me.
Peace and tranquility, family, community. It no matter where we go in the world, just know that the women's where my heart
For 50 years, as you shape for 50 more, as you shape to reach your goal, like you only bring the goal.
Growing up, I can see the vision clear. Sing it out to let the people hear.
Look at how we've gone and how far we've come.
50 years we strong and more to come. More to come. More to come. It's only up from here.
More, more, more. Higher,
like that.
higher.
And higher. And higher.
It's only up.
We're going higher.
50 years we're blessed, we're forged in fire. Still reaching for more.
Forever.
Going up, 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 up.
We make the curricle pity matnik.
Going higher. 50 years we're blessed, we're forged in fire. Still reaching for more.
Going up, going up, 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 up. Going up, going up, going up, 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 up,
We're
up.
going higher. Going higher. As we aspire, build advances, put people together.
Bang, bang, bang.
It's only up from
We'll
here.
take time to reminisce on the richness of our history from the beginning.
afternoon, everybody. And might I suggest that friends should come up higher and enemies can remain where they are. We have more enemies than friends. Please, let's come up closer. The sun will set sooner than you think. But with COVID beginning to rear its head again, the sunlight is perfect for us. That looks so good now. We have a moment, quietly, to think of what Grenada means to you. If you want to make it longer with karaoke or piti matnik, feel free. But as we breathe in the breath of life that is ours, and as we breathe in the air that is all around these islands of ours, we dare to acclaim the greatness of our God and the Spirit that brings us to communion with that God, whatever name we may call. And to know that the energy that is yours is what unites us with all the others and with the ultimate source of that energy. And because of the name we bear, we know that words are made flesh, and the one who lives, lives because of his power to rise and rise again. We come today to celebrate that the one who rises after having risen, who rises in your heart and mind, one day in your body and mind, is making us as a people in Grenada experience the fullness of life to which we are called. So bless our gathering this evening, Lord. Bless our exchange of ideas. Give us not just the wisdom of the moment, but the wisdom across time and space, which will enable us to appreciate that we are called to be nothing less than your keepers of the earth, called to allow earth to be united to heaven in the greatness of our vocation. So search us, God, and know our hearts. Test us and know our thoughts. See that this evening we follow a true and right path. Lead us in paths beyond the trials of the present, to all the glories of our possibilities as individuals and as a people. In Jesus' name we pray. So, welcome, 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 welcome. I am Clyde Martin Harvey, Chairman of the Conference of Churches Grenada. Happy to be so and proud at this moment of what we begin today. 50 years of existence as a nation, celebrating that anniversary, could be seen in a certain light as a time to rejoice, to have party and fete, and bread and circuses was the old expression. But we felt, as Conference of Churches Grenada, that there was more to this occasion than bread and circuses. Nothing wrong with bread, we need it. Circuses, especially for us in our Caribbean bodies, mean that we can enjoy the rhythms that are ours in every part of our earth. But the work of truly appreciating who we are, of not only appreciating the past, but of looking realistically and therefore truthfully for future paths, is what we felt as Conference of Churches was important to these moments. So the idea came up to add something to the intellectual dimension of what we do, thinking that if we got our minds working in the right places and in the right ways, a lot of other things would follow. So this evening you are here present for the first of a series that will look at all aspects of life in Grenada, past, present, and future. And we are a little bit selfish in that we hope that as we explore these things over the next months, mind you it's months, one session a month, that somehow we as church will see more clearly the world that we dare to say Jesus Christ has come to save. And in seeing that world more clearly, be able as church to better participate in the development of our tri-island state and to make our contribution to what we certainly believe, I think, that this land that has been so creative in the past has within itself the energy and the power to have an even more glorious future. So as you experience this evening, drink deep. When you go home tonight, commit yourself ever more deeply to the work that has to be done. And then let us see over the next months whether we can dare not only to dream of a new Grenada, a newer Grenada, but also to put in place as church and as nation some of the things that will make a difference. So thank you for coming. Thank you for your commitment. And I'll say this now, although I suspect at the end it will be said again. Next time you come to the next one, don't come without somebody else. Thank you.
We are happy today to have as our moderator, Mr. William Joseph. Mr. Joseph is no stranger to the Conference of Churches in Grenada, for he was our representative on the National Plan 2035. Mr. Joseph is a proud alumnus of the Grenada Boys Secondary School, my alma mater, and the alma mater of a number of us here. He has had a public service career, including being permanent secretary at various ministries, and was also the director of tourism. He has sat as director on several boards. He's a graduate of the University of the West Indies, the University of Manchester, and the University of Huddersfield in the UK. He's a Christian and he's a family man. He's also an author. He is a public policy analyst and a social commentator. And we are indeed very, very pleased that he has consented to be our moderator. So I turn over to him now.
Thank you so much, Reverend. Good afternoon, everyone. The evangelicals would say where two or three are gathered, the Lord is in the midst. So we are assured that the Lord is here with us. We give thanks. I am very privileged to have the opportunity to moderate this session, and I am happy that I have put on my red shirt, which the bishop assures me he likes. So, so I might wear it again. Thank you very much. Our topic is how has Grenada's socio-political and socio-economic landscape evolved through the years? I recognize that we are in fact a gathering of patriots. And for some of us, if not for all of us, we are waiting, whether it's on the River Shemin or the Paradise River or the Balthazar River, to cross over into the next 50 years of our independence. So there is much ground for us to cover. I take the opportunity immediately to introduce our panelists, and I make bold to say that, and I trust there will be no disagreement on this, that these two daughters of the spice are also daughters of action and progress. Yeah? Are you with me? Yes, because the GULP, whose motto is action and progress, is the party of independence. We ought to recognize that, the party of independence. So we may not be heirs and successors, but they are certainly sons and daughters and grandsons and granddaughters of the GULP in this respect. So our panelists are Dr. Wendy Grenade, Mrs. Gloria Payne Banfield, and Davidson Ned. Now, Mr. Ned, I am told, is likely to join us a little later. He certainly appears to have misdirected himself regarding the time. But we will have a space for him, and once he joins us, we'll be happy to hear from him. So let me speak to our panelists who are here. Gloria, Marlene, you know I never knew the middle name until now. Marlene, it's very nice. And you know, she wants us all to know that she was born during the Second World War. It's very significant. Born in the Second World War, educated at the St. Andrew's Methodist School, SAMS, Belmont Government School, Wesley Hall Primary, and then at the Anglican High for Girls. She taught at her alma mater before going on to Mona UWI in 1966. She graduated with a degree in economics. Mrs. Banfield joined the Grenada Public Service, I think it was called the Civil Service then, in November of that year, and worked her way up to the level of permanent secretary for planning and development and training in the Prime Minister's office. And that was in 1974, the year of independence. During the revolution, she was posted in the UN and also at the OAS. So she served our nation at home and abroad. So we thank her for her service. Throughout her public service career and the time surrounding that career, she maintained a very strong interest in culture, the performing arts and voluntary service in many areas associated with the Netball Association, the Girls Guides Association, Soroptimus International, GNOW, and St. Paul's Academy of Dramatic Arts. I think she also wants us to know that she was a leader in the Venivue La Grenade Dance Company and also the GBSS Dance Company. In 1995, she was awarded OBE. No, I'm wrong. She was awarded for her contribution to the arts at the Arts Festival of 1995 and received the Order of the British Empire, OBE, in 1977. She was recognized by UWI on the occasion of its 50th anniversary as one of its distinguished graduates. So, ladies and gentlemen, Mrs. Gloria Payne Banfield, and we're happy to have her. So I turn now to Dr. Wendy Grenade, who holds several degrees from several, meaning a number of universities around the world. Here, UWI in the US and also in the UK. She's been a professor, Department of Humanities and Social Sciences, the School of Arts and Sciences at SGU. And prior to joining the SGU in August of 22, Professor Grenade was employed for 16 years at UWI Keyville campus, where she was a lecturer and then senior lecturer in political science. At the UWI, she served as Deputy Dean, Outreach and Graduate Studies, Faculty of Social Sciences. As head of the Department of Government, Sociology, Social Work and Psychology, and as coordinator of the Masters in Integration Studies program at Keyville campus. Prior to joining the UWI, she taught as an adjunct professor at the Florida Atlantic University and was also a postdoctoral fellow at the University of Miami, European Union Center. She's researched in many, many areas, especially comparative regionalisms, Caribbean politics, governance and democracy, and more. And she has authored and published a number of books and other articles over the last 10 or so years. So, ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Wendy Grenade. If Mr. Ned joins us, we would then introduce him at that time. So I thank you for helping me to welcome, and we all must encourage our panelists as they proceed with the presentations. In getting down to business this evening, let me say a few things. First of all, I think it is right and good for us to talk to ourselves about ourselves. We've been a pretty silent society in this Grenada for a very long time. And we've missed so much, and we are missing so much when we don't talk to ourselves about ourselves. So we have an opportunity now. The second point is that, observation is that independence, when you think about it, there are really two pillars of nationhood. One is leadership, and the other is development. And they don't exist by themselves. And so our topic provides a perfect platform for us to explore and examine our experiences and to identify the lessons learned for the next 50 years. And this is the crux of the matter. It is one thing to do historical reflection. It is one thing to take note of the knowledge. It is an even more important thing for us to pull these things together and put them into some form of shape that could help us in moving the Grenadian society forward for the next 50 years. You know the theme song for our celebrations this year? Very popular, very creative. So we sing, we're going up and up and up. We sing that. But we must enable ourselves to go up and up and up. And we can't do that unless we do things like we're doing here, as they did at St. Paul's a couple of days ago, a tremendous session. And then we crowned all of that with prayerfulness. We must do that. We must root our nation with and in spirituality. It's crucial, in my view, and I trust that you agree. So, each discussant will have not less than 10 minutes, not less than 10. I know they're well prepared, and we do have the time, so we would treat with their presentations with some degree of patience. And then we're going to have an opportunity as audience to make our point, share our views, our perspectives. And we're happy that all of this is going across to interested Grenadians and others via social media, Facebook and YouTube, I believe. Wonderful. So others beyond this immediate gathering could share in what we're doing. So it is my pleasure now to commence the discussions with a presentation from Dr. Grenade. Wendy?
Thank you very much, William, and good evening to everyone. Bishop Clyde Harvey and other members of the clergy, to all of you gathered here, and to those of you viewing online, and to my fellow panelists. I must say that I share a lot with Mrs. Gloria Payne Banfield. We were actually born on January 8th, and both of us just celebrated a birthday. And we both went to the Anglican High School. Thanks very much, William, for framing this for us. And I want to thank the organizers, the Conference of Churches Grenada, for inviting me to be part of this very important dialogue. And William, I like how you put it. We have to talk to ourselves, for ourselves, to understand ourselves better. And there must be a role for the church, Bishop, because the church has a mandate to build a nation. So what a better place than to be here, understanding the role of the church as a light, the role of the church as salt. So as we reflect on, as we celebrate, as we commemorate 50 years of the Grenadian journey, the church must continue to re-examine itself, to engage in self-critique, and to help us find solutions for the way forward. I'm looking forward to the other sessions, and I hope we will have a session specifically looking at the role of the church in building the nation. Now, the topic is, how has Grenada's socio-political and socio-economic landscape evolved through time? And in thinking about the topic, the society, the politics, the economics, how do we pull it all together? What has happened over 50 years? How do we live? And I always like to begin with my conclusion. I'm concluding at the end that our material circumstances have changed. For many, the material circumstances have changed drastically. But I want us to probe some questions. Are we living better in terms of our quality of life? Are we more neighborly? Are we more compassionate? Are we more empathetic? Is a village still raising a child? What has been the price of progress for Grenadian society? And we want to understand how politics and economics, the combination of the interrelationship among politics and economics, what does that mean for society and how we live? So what I've done, I tried to look at some waves, and I'm speaking here as a political scientist. I'm not the economist, sorry. I'm looking at some waves in Grenada's political development, and I'm trying to draw some lessons from those waves. And I'm ending with some conclusions. Now, I know we have been asked to look at 1974 to 2023. But to understand the 1970s, we have to briefly look back at the 1950s. Because the 1970s, the key actor was Eric Gary. And we have to understand, because what we have done through time, we have demonized Eric Gary to the point that we do not sufficiently recognize his contribution to Grenada. And I'm saying that without any apology. Now, when we think about the 1950s, as we look back, what type of society did we have? Of course, a class-based society, majority black working class, and they were on freedoms, poverty, illiteracy, racism, gender injustices, lack of good health care, and other unfreedoms. And what has been happening through time, even as we celebrate independence, we have to ask, what are the unfreedoms in our society that we need to break free from? Now, the nature of the economy in the 1950s, of course, very much dependent on agricultural production. And the 1951 social revolution became very important. Gary's contribution in terms of the role of trade unionism, better working conditions for plantation workers, a sense of black pride and black consciousness, challenging the status quo, and there was a small opening for the children of plantation workers to have access to education and some semblance of social mobility. There was patriotism and nationalism. But there was the turbulence of the 1970s. What we have was a very polarized society, bitterly divided society, Gary and the anti-Gary forces, a ruptured society, yet a resilient people. What we would see as a constant, whether we're speaking about the 1970s or Hurricane Ivan or COVID-19, we are seeing twists and turns and pushes and pulls, but a resilient people remained constant. The lessons from that period: national pride and patriotism can foster a healthy sense of nationalism. Visionary leadership can have long-lasting impact on the economy and society. And we see today the impact of St. George's University, the vision of Eric Gary. However, a cycle of authoritarian rule, resistance to that rule, lack of tolerance for dissent can lead to societal conflict and breakdown. Eric Gary challenged the colonial establishment. He challenged authoritarian rule. And when he gained state power, he became what he challenged. And that was constant in our historical evolution. The second wave, the period of the Grenada Revolution, 1979 to 83. Of course, continuing to tackle unfreedoms, poverty, illiteracy, lack of health care, etc. But the economic model changed. There was a mixed economy approach where you had the state, cooperatives, and to a lesser extent, the business sector. There was still external dependency that remained constant. We were very much heavily dependent on particularly Cuba and the Soviet Union. There was a continuation of black consciousness and black pride, and enlarged opportunities for human and social development. more scholarships, greater access to education, literacy programs. The society was changing. The children of plantation workers were ruling themselves and getting an opportunity to advance economically and socially. There were attempts to change the class-based society, and there was the instilling, again, of patriotism and national pride. But the polity continued to be polarized and bitterly divided. Even as the society was advancing, the polity remained divided. In the first wave, it was the Gary anti-Gary forces. In this wave, it was the revolutionaries and counter-revolutionaries. I usually say it was the best of times and the worst of times. Again, a very resilient people with a deep capacity to bounce back. What were some of the lessons from that period? Education, both formal education and popular education, must be linked to consciousness building and is a major vehicle to break the cycle of poverty and create avenues for social mobility. As we look around our society, as we're about to celebrate 50 years, we must admit that we have seen some kind of breaking of the cycle of poverty. Many of us are here and our grandparents were plantation workers. And something happened in our society that is beautiful. We still have a lot of work to do. There is still a lot of unfinished business. But the whole question of breaking the cycle of poverty is something that we must celebrate as Grenadians. A lesson from that period as well, women and youth empowerment and volunteerism are drivers for societal transformation. All things being equal, a mixed economy approach which involves strategic state planning, cooperatives, and the private sector, this can promote sustainable growth. A combination of agribusiness, fisheries development, and new tourism can promote food security and sustainability. These are some of the lessons from the PRG. Popular democracy must allow for dissent. That is a major lesson from our history. Popular democracy must allow for dissent, be genuinely inclusive and participatory. And state-society relations must be undergirded by constitutionality. We have a lot of work to do in terms of completing the project of the Grenada Constitution and acceding to the appellate jurisdiction of the CCG. Again, as was the case with the first wave, a cycle of authoritarian rule combined with dogma, popular resistance, and lack of tolerance for dissent can lead to conflict and breakdown. What is happening to the society when the politics leads to societal instability? We have a rupture in society. We have a sort of undermining of the progress that could otherwise have been made. So the politics and the economics, when combined, can affect how we live, how much we believe in ourselves. When promises are broken, it means that the society, William spoke earlier of the silence. We can retreat. But what we have seen through time is the combination of the disappointment with our politics. Yes, there's something in the society that keeps us going, something in the society that keeps us believing in ourselves. The third wave, a transition phase in post-revolutionary Grenada, 1984 to 1995. What we had after the US invasion of Grenada, when the revolution imploded, an externally imposed marriage of convenience among strange bedfellows to create the new National Party. The house became the symbol for reconstruction. It was a moment to reconstruct, to build again. And I must say we are again standing on the threshold of another 50 years, another moment to reconstruct, to build again. What we saw in terms of the economy, there was a major shift from the mixed economy approach, and we had neoliberal economic policies, the focus on markets and profits, the reversal of the economic gains of the PRG. The baby was in fact thrown out with the bathwater. And we were saying earlier, William and I, even as we must celebrate independence, part of celebration is self-critique. We have to be honest with ourselves as we reflect and learn the lessons for the way forward. What we saw during that period as well was intra-party conflict and splintering of the new National Party in 1987 and 1989. What then ensued during that wave was technocratic governance by the NDC in a very unstable multi-party system. And of course, the intra-party conflict and splintering of the NDC culminated in the loss of the 1995 elections. So we are coming out of the 1970s turbulence. We have gone past the revolutionary period and the contradictions and the possibilities. We are in transition. And what is the transition looking like? Grenada is trying to navigate rough waves and rebuild. And there is something within the very DNA of Grenadians that allows us to bounce back, to rebuild again. And I think that is something that we must be proud of. What are some of the lessons from that third wave? Political parties must evolve organically and must not be externally imposed. Economic policies must center human and social development and not just markets and profits. Technocratic governance void of good politics is a recipe for failure. Unmanaged conflict within political parties can lead to breakdown. Societal stability can be influenced by politics and economics. I'm getting into the fourth wave, dominance of the new NNP under the leadership of Dr. Keith Mitchell, 1995 to 2008. And what we saw there, infrastructural development, again, neoliberal economic policies, and a focus on tourism and international business. The society was evolving. Greater access, again, to education for the children of working class families. And we saw changes in the material circumstances of many. When I look today, whether at TAM-CC or at SGU, and I said that in St. Paul's last week, and I see children from Union and Post Royal and Pearls and Paradise and Marion, my own village that I've come from, I feel proud that something is happening where the children of working class families are having access to higher education, and that is something that could change the society as we go forward. What we saw in that wave, whereas in the first wave in the 1970s and during the revolution, we had very overt authoritarianism, even as we had good social programs. What we saw was less authoritarian rule relative to previous waves, less resistance, greater tolerance for dissent than in previous waves, although the softer issues of governance and democracy were in question under the 1995-98 Mitchell administration. Question of inclusion, compromise, participation, trust in terms of state-society relations. We saw changes in the public sector and almost the fusion of the state and the party and the government. But we did have a Truth and Reconciliation Commission. And what was very positive, we had a relatively large percentage of women in politics, Sister Gloria. A lot of women were in our parliament, and I think that's very, very important for politics and society. A major strength was Dr. Mitchell's capacity to lead in crises, whether Hurricanes Ivan and Emily, and later COVID-19. But the polity remained divided, yellow and green. State-society relations were ruptured. Yet the people remained resilient. Grenada becomes a very important study for how the politics could be so divisive. Yet the people, through social networks, through school ties, through the social capital that we have built, still will keep us together even when we vote differently. Some of the lessons from that period, and I'm finishing up. Infrastructural development creates a positive multiplier effect for the economy and society. And I think we have to credit Dr. Mitchell for the work that has been done when he was Minister of Communications and Works back in 1984 and during his period as Prime Minister. When we look through Grenada, we have so many road networks. And I think it's very important what happened with electrification, water, sanitation, and things like that. Another lesson, the development model must privilege human well-being and the environment over markets and profits. The political party must not usurp the roles of the state and the government. Formal democratic institutions we have in Grenada. We have an ombudsman, we have an Office of the Integrity Commission, but these do not guarantee just democratic outcomes. One of the contradictions of our democracy is that, for example, the first past the post electoral system, on 3 occasions, one political party was able to win all parliamentary seats in a parliamentary system that assumes a parliamentary opposition. We have unfinished business to do in terms of the electoral reform that must be done. A lesson from that period, the capacity to lead in crisis is a necessary imperative for small states. The fifth wave, wave 5, realignment to the two-party system. By 2003, and then culminating in the electoral victory in 2008, we saw a new look NDC. What happened then in terms of the global economy? We had 2008, 2009 global financial and economic crisis. What was happening internally? Again, internal wrangling in the NDC, splintering, and electoral defeat in 2013. A significant development that we don't always speak about is Tillman Thomas's humanity. The release of the remaining prisoners charged with the murder of Maurice Bishop and others, and the renaming of the international airport to the Maurice Bishop International Airport. Tillman Thomas was imprisoned by the PRG. Yet it was almost like a Mandela moment for us in Grenada, and we don't often speak about it, where he was big enough to rename the airport the Maurice Bishop International Airport. And I think as we celebrate independence, we have to recognize the role he played, because one of the lessons is that with time, we can get to a point of healing and reconciliation. Another lesson from that period, technocratic governance again, void of good politics is a recipe for failure. And if you look, the initial wave of the NDC from 1990 to 95, and the subsequent wave from 2008 to 2013, the same lessons. Technocratic governance, void of strategic politics. The final wave that I'm looking at, and I know my time is almost up, the NNP comeback and resuscitation of the NDC 2013 to 2023. We saw the Grenada National Sustainable Development Plan. So we are seeing some semblance of state planning, which becomes very important for the society and the economy. We saw COVID-19 and the need to balance lives, livelihoods, and liberty. It was a very, very difficult period for the world and for Grenada. Again, we saw Dr. Mitchell displaying leadership in crisis, and we have to admit that he did in fact display leadership in crisis. What we are faced with now in terms of succession challenges for the NNP, and we don't know how that would unfold going forward. But what happened in 2022 during this wave is the resuscitation of the NDC and the Deacon Mitchell factor. Beyond 50, what would that mean going forward? What does the future hold? We saw several waves, and what we have been doing through these various waves is trying to navigate sometimes rough waters. Some broad conclusions finally. The confluence of external and internal forces influence politics and economics and help to shape the society, external and internal. Second, in the first two waves, overt authoritarian rule, popular resistance, lack of tolerance for dissent, combined with external forces, led to breakdown. 3, what remained the same through time? A divided polity and dependence on external forces. What changed? The society evolved from a predominantly agricultural-based economy to a services economy. We are seeing tourism and international business. We are seeing the blue, the green, and the orange economies with advantages and disadvantages. The material circumstances, as I said at the beginning, the material circumstances of many Grenadians have changed drastically. We are living in nicer houses. We are driving more sophisticated vehicles. We are more educated. We have broken a lot of the unfreedoms that our foreparents experienced in the 1950s. The high levels of illiteracy and ill health, and lack of access to opportunity, lack of access to choice. We are moving past that, even as many, many Grenadians still face unfreedoms. But the question becomes, does this translate to a more meaningful life? Do our material circumstances allow us to live better with ourselves and with others? Are we becoming more neighborly, even as our houses are becoming bigger? Do we have more or less compassion? Is a village raising a child? Bishop, are we more spiritually grounded? What are the role of the church in building the Grenadian nation? And finally, the next 50 years will continue to present challenges and opportunities. However, I am of the view that Grenadians have an innate capacity to navigate crises and bounce back. I am hopeful that the next 50 years can be even more meaningful as we seek to find ways to enhance our democracy and enlarge freedoms. But we must learn the lessons from the past, and we must talk among ourselves, but not just talk, find ways to act so that tomorrow becomes much better than yesterday was. And I thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Grenade. While she was here at the podium, we had the arrival of our third panelist, Mr. Dave Ned. So, Dave, we welcome you. Are you with me? Thank you so much. Accepted. So just a couple of footnotes, and I trust that you're making your own so that when we come to the section of the program where we give you the floor, you would in fact take it and run with it. So there's a couple of footnotes on Wendy's presentation. The Grenadian middle class. What are we learning about that? What does it mean to have a growing middle class in the society? It's got serious implications. This difference that we must note between the, thank you so much, between the preparation for leadership and the presumption of leadership. We are missing something. We have not been preparing our people to lead. A lot of it has been guesswork. And going forward, I suggest that we must find some ways to correct that so we have a better chance of being led more successfully. So I noted the point about the humanity among us as a people that we must strive to maintain. What are we going to do with our young people and the socialization of the Grenadian young people, perhaps the re-socialization? Very important. Very, very important. I see a couple of youngsters here with us. We want to thank you for being here, and we trust that the sharing is beneficial to you, and that you in turn would share with your friends when you leave. So Wendy, we want to thank you for a very powerful mapping and exposure of the Grenadian reality. And we look forward to the discussions when they come at you from the floor. Gloria, I trust you will sit to present. Or you want to stand? You're going to stand. What are you going to do? You want to stand? All right. So let us welcome Mrs. Gloria Payne Banfield to do her presentation.
I think it's high, it's too high. No? Thank you. I'm accustomed to calling him Willie. I'm sorry if I continue. Thank you, Willie, for your introduction. I must endorse your remarks about our appreciation to the CCG for hosting this very important forum. Thank you. In a few weeks, we will be celebrating our 50th anniversary as a nation. It seems to me that many people are thinking about the fete and the party. And a few perhaps may be thinking about where we're going from here. I want to thank Dr. Grenade for pointing us in a few directions. First, I must say that my contribution is drawn from my personal experiences and not from any documentation. Because in terms of research, there is a lot written about Grenada. And if you go to collect all the literature, you would find yourself immersed in a lot of information, good information, and sometimes dubious information. So I'm giving you a personal report. Grenada, having gained its independence in 1974, gained the right to become interdependent with the rest of the world. As against its statehood status, it could now make friends with who it wanted to make friends with in terms of non-traditional donors. So while we were still in the Commonwealth and we had gotten help from the big brothers in the Commonwealth, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, sometimes India, we hadn't even explored the whole Commonwealth. And I remember the time when we even had a chief of police from Nigeria. I don't know how many of you remember that period. But it was after independence we were able to negotiate with Nigeria, which was a non-traditional contact, but notwithstanding the fact it was in the Commonwealth, we were able to get the technical assistance of the chief of police. And by the way, I would continue to say Chief of Police, because as far as I'm concerned, that is the nomenclature for that position, and not Commissioner of Police. A lot of things have to be changed in the Constitution. Not so, Mr. Ned? But it opened the doors for that kind of discussion and relationship with people outside of the Commonwealth. And it went as far as Taiwan. And then we came to the problem of how many Chinas we recognize. And that again was a big discussion about the one China policy. And now I think we have a one China policy. Or do we? We are still friends with Taiwan, but we recognize China, the one who gave us the stadium, as the China. What I'm trying to point out to you is that a number of things were open for scrutiny and discussion. It was not just we could make friends with anybody. Because we were friends with Taiwan, Big China was not happy. And I'm sure that we cannot make friends with both of them. So Big China has given us a stadium, and we're happy. Independence also opened the door for wider cooperation with the UN family, the IMF, the World Bank, or the IBRD, and the IFC, the International Finance Corporation. But I must point out to you that there is a certain amount of dependence on these institutions. For if the IMS comes down to do a survey on the situation, the financial situation in Grenada, when it gives its report, it also gives recommendations. And I just want to point out to you that some of the recommendations could be very onerous, in the sense that recently there was one about taxes, arrears of taxes, and the IMF said if you don't collect the taxes, we're not giving you any more help. I mean, it boils down to that. So their help is dependent on us doing what they advise. And so, independence, not independence. We still have to toe the line to these organizations. Whatever they have as criteria for getting assistance, you have to follow it, and you have to march to the beat of their drums. But it's open to negotiation. You can negotiate, which is different from when you were told you're not to even talk to them. So, we have gone to the Arab community. We hear about loans from Saudi Arabia. We have scholarships to people going to Morocco. And of course, we have widened through the revolution, we have widened our scope for higher education and scholarships with Cuba. Because beforehand, we had nothing to do with the so-called socialist world. But now, without fear or favor or help from the United States, we're going to Cuba, and they're offering quite a few medical scholarships as well as other scholarships. So independence was a good thing as far as I was concerned. Even though we had to get that Cuban corporation because we had a socialist revolution. And some people were not happy with the socialist revolution, and other people were happy because it widened our scope for getting scholarships and expanding our technical and economic cooperation. Where would we have been when we wanted to build an international airport without the help of Cuba? Face it, the Cubans did give us a lot of assistance to get that airport off the ground. So it not only meant Cuba, it also meant Eastern European countries. People we had nothing to do with for a long time because they belonged to the Big C community, the communist community. So independence was good for us in that respect. The membership of the OAS, the Organization of American States, opened our doors to Latin America. And one thing that we could point is the fact that Grenada actually hosted an annual general meeting of the OAS in 1977. June 1977. It was the first English-speaking Caribbean country to do so because we had a very forward-looking Prime Minister, Eric Matthew Gary. And he said, if anybody else could do it, we could do it too. We're going to have the OAS here in Grenada. Believe it or not, a lot of the Latin American countries did not even know where Grenada was. But they had to come because they were members of the OAS. And another thing that I must point out to you is that on a visit to Venezuela by Eric Matthew Gary, Prime Minister, he discovered that Venezuela was buying nutmegs from Grenada, but they had to go to Holland to get the nutmegs. So you're in Venezuela in the same part of the world as Grenada, same hemisphere, but you're going to Holland, to a broker in Holland, to buy nutmegs from a country that is a few miles from you. So all that had changed, because Grenada got to be friends also with Suriname, which again was out of the sphere of the Commonwealth. Suriname is a Dutch country. And so independence brought with it a number of contacts that were valuable for Grenada. However, I must say that having watched things going on around me for the last 50 years, there were some things that should have been better managed. Because we were part of the wide world, the wider community of nations, we tried to talk the same language as they talked. We started talking about good governance. And one of the pillars of good governance is the consultative process. Now, the revolution tried it. I can't deny the fact that they tried the consultative process by having village meetings from time to time and all of that. But it has not been continued. And although we hear about town hall meetings, I never hear when they're having one in my community. Perhaps my community doesn't exist. And I'm not speaking only of this government, but I'm talking about the other government that went out. The consultative process is very important for democracy. And while the revolution criticized what they called 3-minute democracy, where you just went and cast your vote for 3 minutes, I didn't see an institutionalized injection of consultations. Consultations could take a number of forms. I can write a paper on it for the present government. I could tell them that you cannot call a roundabout the CARICOM non-roundabout without consulting the people. I would tell them too that the CARICOM roundabout should more fittingly be in True Blue, at the True Blue roundabout, which was put there as the entrance to Carifta Expo 69. Out of Carifta Expo 69 came the idea of Carifesta, which later happened in Guyana for the first time in 1972. And it is also fitting that that roundabout is the entrance to Grenada. If you want to call a roundabout after something significant, you should consult the people and you should do some research. So I'm afraid I must say this because perhaps I might only get this chance to say it, because I won't be invited to a consultation on that. I'm getting to that point. However, what independence did for us, tell me if I'm going above my time, because I was told 7 minutes. One good thing is that there has been an infusion of national pride as we identify with a national flag, a coat of arms, our anthem, and our motto. And note well, the motto is ever conscious of God. We aspire, build, and advance as one people. And we need to remind ourselves all the time about the presence of God. This is a Christian nation. Our Constitution allows freedom of conscience, which means that other faiths are respected. But Grenada is definitely a Christian nation. And we must always remember that. Religious freedom is not a privilege, it is a must. And I hope one day that we'll be able to look seriously at an African religion called Orisha, which exists especially in Munich, where the people there are the keepers of the drums. And it is a world religion. look at that religion and give the encouragement it needs to develop. I don't know if it's paganism. I don't know, but do the research. Grenada has been a haven, I have to say a haven, for all kinds of people and all kinds of activities and all kinds of ideologies. And the fact that we are so tolerant, we must be complimented. But we must not let our guard down. We must always remember to preserve the things that are Grenadian. And I must say, the teaching of civics in schools should be brought back. The fact that our children are more want to go to their cell phones and to Google a question about Grenada instead of having been taught these things as part of a civics program. We have to start looking at it seriously. And so, to conclude, I think that independence was a good thing for us. It infused us with national pride as we identify with our emblems. And it made us proud to be Grenadians. When we had winners in the Carifta Games, the OECS Swimming Championships, and the Olympics. You know, if we were not independent, Karani James would have entered the Olympics as a British citizen, not as a Grenadian. We have to remember that independence opened the doors for all of that. And finally, I want to conclude with a little anecdote. You know, we have a big community out there in Trinidad, in the rest of the Caribbean, in New York, especially Brooklyn, in the UK, and sometimes as far as Australia. I have a friend who was coming to Grenada for holidays. And she used to work in a company. And she was telling everybody that she's going to Grenada, where she come from, and all of that. And there was a certain lady who never said where she came from. And quietly, she drew her aside and told her, you know, I come from Grenada too, you know. And my friend was shocked. She said, I never knew that. But why are you hiding? Why are you hiding that fact? There are people, believe it or not, out there who were ashamed to say that they were Grenadian. And we would like to show those people that Grenada is a place to be proud of. Grenada is on the way up. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Lady Gloria. I thought you would sing it, you know. We going up. I want to thank you so much. You know, took a few notes. I can't touch all. But this whole question of Grenada in the world, international diplomacy, and Grenadian diplomacy, And now in this period, we don't want a Nigerian commissioner, chief of police. But clearly, we can't be talking about the creative industries without going back. We must go to Ghana, and we must go to Nigeria, and we must go to, if we want to do something really meaningful about growing, developing our creative industries, we must go. Now, I was very encouraged regarding your treatment of this issue of diplomacy, the whole business of resource mobilization, the business of new skills that were required of Grenadian diplomats, the negotiations and so on, to make something credible and creditable out of all of this. But you touched something, and I want to hang on to it a little bit. You said if we were not independent, Karani would have entered the Olympics, may have, as a British citizen. Yeah, very powerful. And I would say that if we were not independent, there could not have been and would not have been a Grenada revolution. You with me? Am I preaching good? Thanks a lot. So, Dave Ned has joined us. So let me say something about our friend. David Ned is an entrepreneur and a community advocate, and he's been at that for over 2 decades. He served on several boards and in several organizations, the Willie Redhead Foundation, the Save the Camahon Park Committee, National Cultural and Heritage Advisory Committee, Grenada National Museum Incorporated Board of Directors, Citizens in Defense of Grenada Lands and Heritage, and the Independent Caucus for Constitution Reform. His advocacy revolves around issues such as development, lands, heritage, culture, civic education, as it relates to the ordinary citizen. And he wants us to know that he is committed to advocating on the principles of good governance, a respect for the rule of law and the Grenada Constitution. And you know, in the Constitution, they didn't write good governance, eh? There is something they put there called good government. Good government. And we need to begin to understand what that means. Anyway, it's my pleasure now to invite Dave to come and share with us. And to do so, Dave, you have what? You need more than 10 minutes? Wonderful.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you, Mr. Moderator, for your welcome this afternoon. I'm standing on the protocol already established this evening. I recognize Bishop Clady. Thank you very much. This is one function that I really did not want to be late for, because I would have very much liked to have had the first go, say all that I had to say, and by the time these 2 ladies finished, everybody would have forgotten what I said, But alas, I'm here and I'm the last person to present this evening. The journey to independence is a very interesting one, and as the other panelists indicated earlier, it's impossible to carry on a conversation about Grenada's independence without a conversation on Eric Matthew Gary. The two are inextricably linked, and it matters not how we feel about the situation, how we feel about the person. The realities are that the arrangement that was made on the 7th of February 1974 was influenced totally by the struggles of the working class, the struggles of women who were not allowed to work, and that formed the basis, really, of the push that brought Geary to the fore. First, Grenada was a dependent entity. We were totally dependent on Britain for domestic as well as international affairs, and we made no decisions on our own. Sometime later on, we became an associated state. And with associated statehood, we were allowed to make decisions internally, but all the international, external decisions were still a function of the British Crown. So there was a lot of discussion, a lot of animations, a lot of struggles, strife coming into that period of our independence. And interestingly, whilst many states would have fought for independence, Grenada was actually fighting against themselves as to whether Grenada and Grenadians, we were fighting against independence. Some of us were. We were divided as to whether we should become independent or not. And the struggles that preceded that period had everything to do with the political climate then, who wanted independence under Eric Geary and who thought that we should not have independence under Geary. But for us today to understand that independence journey, the one people, the one journey, the one destiny, we must first unpack the arrangement that was made on that day. And on the 7th of February 1974, our independence gift was, in fact, a 1974 Grenada Constitution, a book that looks like this now. It was bounded and it looked different, but this is what it looks like now. And interestingly, if you were to show this to 90% of the Grenadians, this would be the first time they were seeing it. And so that gives a backdrop as to where we are with respect to our independence. Because everything about our independence is in the Constitution of Grenada. Everything. And it sets the parameters, it sets the aspirations, it sets the desires of the Grenadian people. What is a good citizen? How are we going to judge? What is the result of this independence? What are we looking for if we don't know what is required? And for some of us, the Constitution, when you dissect, when you open it up, when you ventilate it, it gives rules to everybody. So it's interesting that it is the Conference of Churches that is having these discussions here this evening, because there's a role also for the church. And in the preamble, in the lead up to the Grenada Constitution, it says, whereas the people of Grenada have affirmed that the nation is founded upon principles that acknowledge the fatherhood and the supremacy of God. So there's no mistake. It's there. It's the first bullet in the preamble. And it follows, and man's duty towards his fellow man. So there's a duty. Every one of us in the room here today, we have a duty to God, first and foremost, and then we have a duty to our fellow man. And unless we have this discussion, we come away not fully understanding what our roles are. And it doesn't stop there. Bullet number B says, whereas the people of Grenada recognize that inasmuch as spiritual development is of supreme importance to the human existence, and the highest expression thereof it is their aspiration to serve that end with all their strength and resources. A very powerful statement. It speaks to a relationship with your God, and it says to you that you must enter that arrangement with all your strength and resources. Can't get more important than that. But it doesn't end there. It goes on to say, whereas the people of Grenada again, and those are very important words, whereas the people. It's not whereas the governor, it's not whereas the prime minister, it's not whereas the office clerk, it is the people, one people, undertaking one journey with a common destiny. And what we are looking at here is what is the promise of the Grenada independence. So it goes on to say that whereas the people firmly believe in the dignity of human values, and that all men are endowed by the Creator, the reference to our God, with equal and inalienable rights. So the Grenada Constitution recognizes that your rights comes from the Creator, God. No man gives you a right, because those rights come from God. And that rights and duties, and again, the duty we spoke about to your fellow man, are correlatives in every social and political activity of man. And that while rights exalt individual freedoms, duty expresses the dignity of the freedoms. It then goes on to speak about the commitment now to the rule of law. So these first three bullets all had to do with the Creator, your relationship with the Creator, your recognition of the Creator, that your nation is founded on a Creator. It now goes on to speak about the rule of law. It says that you are to respect the rule of law, and since moral conduct constitutes the noblest flowering of their culture and the plural heritage, regard it as the duty of every man always to hold it in high respect. And I want to go through this simply because this is the foundation of Grenada. This is what we are supposed to be. For some of us, it may sound coming foreign, but this is the arrangement that was made, and the Constitution is an arrangement. There was a delegation that went to Buckingham Palace. There was negotiations back and forth. There were amendments. There were additions to the Grenada Constitution after all of those. So this is the arrangement that reflects the wishes, the desires of the Grenadian people. But an important bullet comes up here now. It says, whereas the people of Grenada reiterate that the ideal of free men, and we would want to consider ourselves free, we live in a democracy, and one of the tenets of a democracy is freedom. And this Constitution says that the ideal of free men enjoying freedom from fear and want can be best achieved if conditions are created whereby everyone may enjoy his economic, social, and political, civil, and cultural rights. So today we're speaking about social rights, we're speaking about political rights, economic rights, but it's all here in the preamble to the Grenada Constitution. It's here, so it's not by mistake we're speaking about these things. And it's necessary that we have the Constitution. And the final bullet that says, whereas the people of Grenada desire that the Constitution should reflect the above-mentioned principles and belief, which represent those high ideals upon which the nation is founded. And then the people make a request of the Constitution, and it's a direct request. And it says that, and make provision for ensuring the protection in Grenada of fundamental rights and freedoms. So all of what we read here today is all about the protection of fundamental rights and freedoms. The organs of government, they're set up the institutions of government, they set up the separations of powers, the Constitution sets it up, but there is a simple basis for all of those entities that the protection of fundamental rights and freedoms is at the fore. That is what they are there to do, to protect the fundamental rights and freedom of the citizen. And interestingly, not just the Grenadian citizen, because the Constitution speaks to every person on Grenadian soil. So it's one of the considerations that we have. So it's absolutely necessary that I heard the call for civics, and 50 years after we are independent, the arrangement, the rules, the guidelines that the average citizen, that establishes the relationship between the citizen and the state, still is not included on our educational curriculum. So we have languages from as far away, how many thousand miles away, that are taught in Grenada. We have all sorts of specialities that are now on the curriculum, but the basic tenets, the basic rules, still evades being included in that curriculum. And it's probably necessary that we start to have this discussion, because it's not by accident that this hall is not half filled. If we were discussing another project here this evening, or if we were having a party, there would be no space. Parking would have been an issue, and the hall would have been filled. And we have to ask the question, why? You know? And Grenada, on this journey, we have gone through some. We've gone through a lot. There were periods in our history when the Constitution, those very rules, were in fact suspended. We saw the violations. We saw the effect on fundamental rights and freedoms almost immediately. So it's not that we don't know that the Constitution is important when it comes to protection of fundamental rights and freedoms. We have had the experience, we've lived it, and we still, there's debate on both sides, but the facts were the facts. And an interesting observation here today was that during the intervention, a lot has been said about our relationship with the British monarchy. But during the intervention, when the British monarchy or the UK forces, or when other forces were contemplating coming into Grenada, and some say intervention, some say invasion, whatever the context, it was interesting to note that the British government says that Grenada was an independent entity. And because of that, they had no right interfering in the internal affairs of Grenada. Now, when we take this against the backdrop of a lot of claims that we've made against the British monarchy, they're responsible for the position where we are now, the role that they played during slavery, the whole discussion around reparations. It is necessary that we unpack these things so that the facts can come to the fore. The relationship with Britain is as an independent entity. So we need absolutely to reflect on these things. The Constitution is what is going to be our guide. It enforces, it regulates, and if we don't know it, then I think that we have, all of us have a problem. So our journey, we 50 years ago, we had nuclear families. There was a mother and a father and 3, 4, 5, 6 children running around in a yard, 10 children running around. Now, single mothers, 1 child, 2 children. And what is the effect on society. How are we dealing with that? What's the effect on this generation now? They don't get together as they used to. They don't play together. They don't, So how do they respond to adversities? How do they react to challenges? Those are the kinds of concerns that we had. Agriculture, 30% of GDP 50 years ago. What is it now? Sustainable agriculture was an integral part of our development. Where is that now? And those are some of the yardsticks that we need to look at, socially, economically, and politically. There was a calypso, or there are many calypsos. There's a popular one now. She's only 50, and meaning clearly that she's young, she's inexperienced, and she's growing. So give her a chance. And there are many others. I remember one from a long time ago. It says, "We have come a long way, yet we have a long way to go." And I want to leave those words with you from Cecil Belfon. I want to leave those words with you here this evening. So I thank you for the opportunity, and we look forward to the discussions afterwards.
Thank you, Dave. Cecil Belfon, for those of you who don't know, is a flying turkey. We're talking calypso, the proper names, stay on the side a bit. Flying turkey. But a very important contribution to our discourse this evening. And this business, Dave, about the Constitution, what the preambular sections and so on, and the significance of those things, provisions there. And then the concern among many of us about the need to reform the Constitution to address some very practical issues. If you go through the Constitution now, one of the things you will find, and it might alarm you, is that the Prime Minister of Grenada, so I'm talking about a specific individual, whoever was in the office, has been given in excess of 20 different powers in the Constitution. So you see what was going on there. You have a mimic of the monarch. Yes, it's a mimic of the monarch. The British, the kingdom could only clone itself with respect to what it does in the colony. So these things shouldn't surprise us. So there is work for us to do there. And I think, Dave, and I would suggest to all of us that one of the things that we need to address in terms of this business of constitutional reform is that, yes, we accept the Constitution as a supreme law. Yes. But the Constitution must mean more than that. Otherwise, what we have there is an instrument that lawyers attach themselves to, as if the Constitution is about lawyers, and it's not about the society. It's not about the Grenadian people. I think Dave, you're right on point there. I applaud that. There's something I had raised with Wendy earlier this evening. So we are talking about the Grenadian, and I'm about to give you the floor, right? So just bear with me 2 minutes. The community, who are we? Who are we? And if we look at ourselves, as we should, so yeah, predominantly of African descent, but there are Indians here. The pre-Kapalani Indian community here, what do we know about them? Very important families and so on in business and so on in Grenada and in the professions. Indians. Well, we don't operate as if we have Indians among us. And the mulatto community. And the community in And perhaps we need to use that institution to do a lot more, to help us to situate ourselves, to define ourselves so that we understand what we're treating with. So, I'm going to give you the floor, but let me just share one personal reflection. Perhaps it might excite the discussions. I went to GBSS in 1970. In that year, we were wearing short pants still. The Gary, Pablo, you were there. I see some of my. The Gary's Mongoose gang beat up a GBSS boy. And we were told that we demonstrated. Little boys. I come from Reedy. What the hell I know about that? Nothing. But I'm out on the street. And we all out there. We demonstrated. I'm saying that to say this. By the time independence came in 74, we did not care. A lot of us. We were anti-Gary. We didn't care. And when the revolution came in 79, March 13 became our point of national reference. Not that we were members of the NJM, I certainly was not. And I thank God I was not. But March 13 became our point of national reference. Again, we were anti-Gary. And you know, I became a grown fella, I hope. And I'm the director of tourism. The year is 2000. And I'm standing on the porch of that office. Edwin knows it very well. And I hear a chant coming across the carnage. And and they got to the fire station, I could see some little ones decked off in their national colors. It was independence of that year. And the tears I was a guilty man. I didn't care. And to see these 4-year-olds and 3-year-olds expressing what they undertake to be their love for their country. And Pablo, we didn't care. I stood there a guilty man and I wept. But I hope not to weep again if we shape the next 50 based on the contributions that we've heard and those that you will give. Thank you so much. So, I'm going to open the floor now for your contributions. There's a microphone in the middle of the hall. And so if the Spirit moves you, you go to the microphone and you make your contribution. We're going to do this for about 15 minutes. Is that fine? Yes. Yes? About that, yes. So please, Reverend, you want to start?
Yes.
You are going to start.
I have 2 questions, and they're not addressed to anybody specifically. The first one is speaking about geopolitical interdependence when we're speaking about being independent. Our inability or maybe our reticence to speak about injustice and human rights violations when they're being practiced by other countries because we are economically dependent on them. That's one. And the second one is during the military actions that happened in the 1980s, the invasion intervention. There were a number of people who opposed the intervention because they said our country was sovereign. My question is this: if sovereignty resides in the people, as Dave was speaking about, but the government of the day or the junta of the day had the people under house arrest, where is the sovereignty? Questions.
Thank you so much. Who's going to take it? Wendy, you want to start? Gloria? Dave? So let me give it by assignment. Wendy, make the first go. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Reverend. Your first question is about geopolitical interdependence and how, if I understand you correctly, you're saying we do not often speak about human rights violations when some countries engage in human rights violations because we are so economically dependent. That's what I'm hearing you saying. And you know, a lot of people argue that we are not really independent because we are economically dependent. And I welcomed what my other two panelists, the way they pointed us to what independence means. Now, from my perspective, independence matters, political independence. So we have political independence in the context of economic dependency. How do we navigate that? How do we reconcile economic dependency and political independence? Now, when Sister Gloria was speaking about the IMF, she made a point that we have some kind of maneuvering space to negotiate. There is no country in the world that could be fully independent. Because as we trade with the rest of the world, we depend on others. So if independence means, and this would be tying into your second question, a country that has some measure of autonomy over its internal affairs, a country that enjoys internal sovereignty and is a legal personality in the international community, where sovereignty then means no other authority can tell you how to conduct your affairs. So we know that it is very nuanced, because even if a great power may not have authority to say to us, this is how you must vote in the UN, they have the power to sanction. What then do you do? That's why I always advocate for a regional sovereignty, for South-South cooperation. So you enlarge your sovereignty by having numeric advantage, by having solidarity with others. Because as a small state, it becomes very difficult for you in a world system that is based on unequal power, that is based on unfair trade, that is based on global injustices. How do you, as a small state, exercise your sovereignty? Who become your friends? Do you have the right to determine who your friends are? Do you have the right to determine what issues you champion and what issues you don't champion? What does sovereignty mean? And I want to suggest to us that in the 21st century, as we are seeing multiple issues, multiple and complex issues, what's good is that we have multiple actors. So whereas in the Cold War, you had a bipolar world, and you had either the USSR or the United States, what we have now, we have multiple actors. So you can exercise your sovereignty through negotiations much better, through leveraging. But as you think about leveraging, it's always better when you leverage with more numbers. So Grenada becomes, in terms of its ability to navigate the international system with the OECS, with CARICOM, with ACS, through the ACP, with the African and Pacific Union, you have greater bargaining power. You have greater negotiating strength. And your sovereignty could be maximized when you share it with like minds. So you are very right in that small states have to engage in what I like to call strategic diplomacy. And they have to know when neutrality becomes a strategy. When you have to say, it's not my business and I would turn a blind eye. Whether it's thinking about when I remember when the Soviet Union invaded Afghanistan, it was during the period of the Grenada Revolution. And the revolutionaries voted to support the Soviet Union when it invaded Afghanistan. And I think that was a mistake. Small states must know when neutrality is a strategy. So you in the UN, you have to vote strategically. And the 14 votes of CARICOM become very important to enlarge our sovereignty because it means you have numeric advantage. The United States has 1 vote in the UN. CARICOM has 14. If we know how to strategically pool our sovereignties together, as you pool sovereignties, you maximize your own limited minimal sovereignty. So when we speak about regionalism, and I always go to regionalism, and people say, you know, you have to cede your sovereignty or give up your sovereignty. I say, no, you're not ceding your sovereignty. You are pooling your sovereignty. And in pooling, you maximize. And this is how you can find more maneuvering space in the international system where you can decide to support whether China or Taiwan. And Errol Barrow put it well, and I would end. He said we will be friends in his first speech to the UN. He said Barbados would be friends of all and satellites of none. And I think as small states, this is an opportunity in the international society for us again to be friends of all and satellites of none.
Yes. Yeah, Edwin, you coming, that's good. Just to say this, that we're dealing here in many ways with this concept called national interest. The Soviets, I will tell you, were very shocked at that vote. But insofar as those in Grenada were concerned, they saw it as something that they should do to promote their national interests in the context of the times. So it's not something that is set in, it is something very, very, very. Edwin, let's hear you. You want, okay, Edwin, 1 sec, please. You take it off.
Thank you very much. Okay, thanks. The issue of sovereignty is a very political one. It's an issue that has challenged many, many democracies before, and it continues to do so. From my interpretation is that our sovereignty is given to us. It's documented in the Constitution of Grenada. Now, if we agree that that is the yardstick that you measure sovereignty by, it's reinforced when all our officials, all of the officials, so you elected your parliament, you elect your executive authority, your judiciary, they are all asked to take an oath of office that says they pledge to honor, to uphold, and to respect the Grenada Constitution. And that's it. Their duty, as defined in the Constitution, is limited by the document called the Constitution, by the contents of the Constitution. And that's very important for us to understand and for us to accept. A lot has happened with respect to our democracies. In Grenada, there's been an intrusion into the Constitution of, inverted commas, party politics. And interestingly, the document refers at no place, none of the sections refers to a political party. Other constitutions do. So Australia has a constitution, the political concept of a political party, and they have defined rules. So in the context of Grenada, what we have is an amalgamation of what is called direct democracy. So the people don't directly make the decisions, but Section 32 of the Constitution advises that each constituency is supposed to return a member to the House of Representatives, and they are supposed to directly elect that member. By directly electing the member, it means that you must have a relationship with him. There must be some back and forth. And that the constituents, the views, the aspirations, the desires of the constituents is what is supposed to be reflected in our parliaments. Because the instruction is that you are elected to the parliament, directly elected to the parliament. Your duty as a representative lies within the walls of the parliament. That's where you make your contributions. So again, there are a number of anomalies. The chief of police is only one. The Constitution requires that the head of the police force is the chief. One chief, no Indians. We have a system where we refer to the commissioner. And the commissioner has assistant commissioners with specific responsibilities. There's one chief in the Constitution, and he is responsible for everything. So we hear about special advisors for the police. The chief of police is the advisor. That's his duty. So there are a number of developments, intrusions I want to call them. Dr. Alexis might want to say red herrings, that we have included in the Constitution over time. But our sovereignty is directed by the Constitution. We ask our officials to swear to honor that Constitution. So the contents of the Constitution is what must be reflected in our diplomatic decisions, etc. Thank you.
Yeah, sure.
Yes, I want to thank my brother for speaking to the question of sovereignty, but I just wanted to add something. There are different ways that we could understand sovereignty. There is internal domestic sovereignty, that's what you explained. There is external sovereignty, there is international legal sovereignty, and there's transnational sovereignty. A scholar by the name of Stephen Krasner came up with this typology. And I always like to use the example of illicit drugs, because what we have is a lot of sovereignty bargains and trade-offs. So internal or domestic sovereignty, what you spoke of, deals with citizenship, and exactly what you spoke of, the rule of law and citizenship. But external sovereignty, this is where a powerful state could really undermine your sovereign authority externally. But international legal sovereignty is what Sister Gloria was speaking about. You have the right to sign a treaty. So for example, if your domestic sovereignty is compromised, you cannot successfully deal with the threat of illicit drugs. And your transnational sovereignty is compromised, because although part of sovereignty is autonomy and territoriality, you cannot stop pathogens from coming in. You cannot prevent cyber threats from coming into your territory, even as you are sovereign. How do you engage? You sign treaties. And you know why you could sign a treaty? Because you are sovereign legal personality. That is international legal sovereignty. So you sign a treaty that would allow you to cooperate with others to deal with what the compromises are, deal with what is undermining your domestic sovereignty. We could speak a lot more about this, but I just wanted us to problematize it a bit better in terms of the dimensions of sovereignty. Domestic legal sovereignty is one part, but there are other dimensions of sovereignty as well. Yeah, thanks.
Wonderful, you've addressed it very adequately. Gloria, you want a voice on this? Okay, sure.
Okay, I just wanted to make a contribution to this discussion. Something happened to me when I was at the UN. We were trying to get the UN to recognize the date of the abolition of the slave trade, and to celebrate the 150th anniversary of that event. The Caribbean countries were proposing it, and the Caribbean countries were supporting it en masse. And I had the opportunity to pay a courtesy call on the ambassador to Zambia. Unfortunately, he was an African man, seasoned diplomat. He was married to a Barbadian, so that had a lot to do with his thinking and his view of the Caribbean. He said to me, Gloria, the African countries are going to be very hesitant to support that resolution because there are many of us who still have slavery in our countries. We don't want everybody to know that, but we're not going to be supporting the celebration of that event. Full stop.
Okay, thanks a lot. Edwin? No, we must have Edwin now. Yeah, we do. Edwin, let's go.
It's off? It's on. Okay, let me just say good night to everybody. And I'm really happy I came. Thanks to the presenters. It was very enlightening. But just one little bit of clarification I thought I would ask Sister Gloria. Because you mentioned relative to the international airport and the fact that during the revolution, the Cubans were able to build it for us. I'm recalling somehow that prior to the revolution, I might have been hearing a lot of talk, and I know you may know the details. I'm trying to get the details for clarification purposes. Maybe the Canadian government had promised us an airport and that they had done all the preliminary work, and probably that's why the revolution was able to start the airport the same year. Is that correct or anything like that? Okay.
Let me take it step by step.
Okay.
When the British government was in charge, they were looking for an airport in Grenada. They looked at 3 sites, one in Pearls, one in La Tante, and one in Point Soline. They claimed, it is said, that the one in Point Soline was the better one, or the best. But again, this is hearsay, quite frankly, or gossip, that the big landowners in St. Andrews wanted something. They said St. George's had the town, the capital, and Grenville must have something. So that is where they negotiated to have Pearls designated as the airport site. However, as time went on, it was becoming very treacherous to do anything with Pearls, in that any expansion would have to go into the sea because it was not long enough. So they would have to expand it to take big jets. And therefore, the best site was identified as Point Soline, even then. So, Eric Matthew Gary made a decision in his cabinet to acquire the property of W.E. Julian in Point Soline for the airport. So by the time the revolution came, that property had been acquired for the airport. So it was what you call a done deal.
Yeah, thanks very much. I was trying to clarify that because I think all the documents, the feasibility, the pre-feasibility studies, everything was done. Hence the reason why it was able to start so quickly. Thanks very much. Yeah.
All right, thanks a lot. Just to add that, in fact, there were many landowners, other than W. Julian, many landowners who were essentially dispossessed and so on. Many were compensated thereafter. But that is these are the facts. Okay, who else, please? Lady, please.
Thank you, panel discussers. I want to thank you, I can't say Gloria, Mrs. Gloria Payne. I want to thank you for the opportunity that you had to let us understand the deep underpinnings of having a visionary leader. I think Sir Eric Matthew Gary was one of those. I want to comment also too on the School of Medicine. I think it was because of his initiation with Independence, with Miss World, with Character Expo 69, that we were able to bargain with 3 Americans to come and set up the school here in Grenada. But I think things got out of hand in terms of leadership or Grenada understanding the treasure that Grenada is. So unless we understand our roots deep enough, only then can we become better bargainers at the table. I have been a student, 1976 graduate, and I could not quite understand the political upheaval that my dad would try to teach us or to tell us. You don't just get out there and do your own thing. You listen, you understand, make sure you understand every detail of what's happening. We had you talking about the youths today and the nuclear family. How many nuclear family today has counsel at least once every 2 weeks? This was very practical in my home, that my dad would gather the family, talk about politics, but mainly at the end of it all, we had to decide and understand that if we break the sovereignty even of our inalienable right, every child's inalienable right, clean water, fresh air, each of us are entitled to that. So if we do not know what we are entitled to, how can we stand up as men and women? And men at the time were more the voices that were heard. Women were kept in the background, you know. They are the homemakers. But I am forever grateful for women like Wendy and Gloria to be able to stand your ground, so that we, this generation of the baby bloomers, can stand their grounds. I thank you. God bless you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I do not detect an interest. Gloria? Yeah, sure.
At the risk of being called a Garyite, which I was reminded of before I came in here. I must say that history has not been kind to Mr. Gary. I think that it is important that Grenada understands that here was a man who didn't have a secondary education. Here was a man who preached a sermon in his church when he was 12 years old, because the priest then saw the leadership instincts in him. Here was a man who took up the cause of agricultural laborers, who women were working for 6 pence a day and men 10 pence, and who had so many bags of cocoa and nutmeg to carry to the Buchan that their children had to come home from school and help them to carry the load. Very misunderstood, and the history of Grenada has not been kind to him. After the revolution, he was demonized. There were so many stories of corruption, unscrupulous behavior, and so many things that when I heard them, I will tell you quite frankly, I wondered where I was, because I never saw any of these things happening. I could tell you one thing about Mr. Gary. He was a man who wanted the best. And I'll tell you something else about him. He was a critic of no mean order. Don't come and tell him some cockamamie story and you don't have the facts. He would ask you, when did it happen? Where were you when it happened? And he would put you through the ropes. And I know that there were several professionals in the service who thought they could have pulled the wool over his eyes. And you know what he used to say? So you went to a university. You have a degree in so and so and so. What about X, Y, and Z in this project? They never thought of it. He was very precise, very precise. I could tell you other stories where Mr. Lauriston Wilson and myself, Lauriston was the Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Finance. I was Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Planning and Development. Accompanied Mr. Gary on delegations, and we had to sit down and write his speeches after he gave us an outline. Sometimes we wrote the speech and he never used it because he had his own speech and he knew what he wanted to talk about. And he found that we put too much what he considered to be things that would be acceptable for the others, the listeners to hear, but not what he wanted to see. So he just discarded the speech and he spoke from his heart. I would tell you that he was a very difficult man to work with because he was so precise and so exact. So when you come to that airport story, I could also tell you that the Canadians had indeed promised to give $500,000 Canadian for a feasibility, a pre-feasibility study for the airport. I would tell you also that the British Development Division in the Caribbean had negotiated a contract with Plessy International, who were going to do the navigational aids for the airport. A lot of things were put in place. When the revolution came, they walked in to a given situation. They just had to implement. And to some extent, the same thing is happening now. The NDC government walked into a situation, there were many projects to implement. And that's what they're doing, implementing it. And I can't fault them, just as I don't fault their revolution for building the airport. If government is a continuum, you don't scrap everything you find and say, oh, that was Garyism. You take it and you run with it. And that is how we got an international airport.
All right. Thank you so much, Gloria. You know, who's going to write it? You should.
Who's going to write?
You write it. You say history won't be kind to Gary, you write the history with respect. You know, it's serious. A couple of days ago, I met a colleague of mine who's very senior in the GOLP. And I asked him, what is the GOLP doing in the organizing and all this stuff for the 50th? And he gave me some feeble thing about some flambeau something. And from the time I hear you say flambeau, I realized that they're not. So I said, man, the GOLP is the party of independence. If the authorities didn't call you, you go to them and say, we are the GOLP, we are the party of independence, let us talk about the role and the color and whatever of our involvement in the activities. So I'm simply saying, we can't wait on other people, shouldn't, to write it. Because Gloria, you say some things that I never heard before. So please write it, deliver it to the Cultural Foundation, because that place must be pretty empty. It needs to be filled up with good quality stuff. And let's get going. I'm sorry to be so crude, but I think that's what we should do. Anyone else? Well, thank you. Thank you so much. Anybody else wishes to? No. Yeah, of course, Cheryl. Sorry? Yes, right there.
Okay, first of all, thanks to the presenters who all did a pretty good job. Very interesting presentations. Of course, I did not grow up in this country, so I'm not really in a position to comment too much on what was said or not said. But having lived here for I guess now must be about 40-something years, it seems to me that in some areas, especially dealing with people, there's a lot of work still to be done. And that's one point, take it in any way you want to. I also want to commend the Council of Churches for initiating this discussion, but I lament the fact that the publicity was rather poor. It always saddens me when I come to occasions like these to find very few young people, because my age group know all of this already, or most of it anyway, and we ain't that energetic. But we have a wide group of young people in Grenada who know very, very little about what has happened here, what needs to be done, what kind of people we need to become to carry the whole journey forward. So I would plead with the Council of Churches, whatever their communications might be, to try and do a better job. I only know about this because I was listening to the Bishop's program this morning on GNCC, and I heard him talk about this panel discussion. And since I was coming to St. George's, I said, okay, I'm going to stay for it. Otherwise, of course, I would be home. So it's just to hope that the Council of Churches, GCC, by the time the next panel discussion comes around, can do a little bit more publicity. And of course, sending something to a school, let me just end by saying, if you don't get the teachers involved, or few of the teachers anyway, who are interested enough in what's going on, forget that notice you send to schools, it's just going on somebody's desk and they're forgetting about that. You have to have somebody in the schools who is willing to talk to the students about it and encourage them to attend occasions like these, because these occasions are important and we need it for our development. Thank you.
Good. So wonderful, and thank you so much. It wasn't done at the front end, but perhaps at the back end. In the politics, we call it retailing. Retailing. So we can take the value, extract the value from what was delivered here this evening and have folks packaged in such a way that young people, especially, if we target young people, to receive this information. So all is not lost if in fact we could execute a retailing of what we've shared here this evening. Okay, I don't see anyone coming towards the microphone. If so, I'm going to turn back to the authorities, the organizers for this event, to bring it to a close. But let me, before doing so, say a final word of thank you to my panelists, Dr. Grenade, Mr. Ned, and Sister Gloria. Thank you so much. Well done.
After doing such a wonderful job, yes, thank you very much. Yes, I definitely need help. It needs to come down. Everything needs to come down to meet my height. Thank you so much. I was just saying that after such a wonderful job, now the moderator wants to put us in trouble inside the Presbyterian Church. It is my pleasure to, and after such a discussion, it would be nice to make it longer. but I know the time, yes? But I do have to say, though, I have been well impressed upon by what has been said. And I echo the sentiments of the last person who contributed. I'm sorry, ma'am, I don't know your name, but you said you're not Grenadian, you're living here 40-something years, and I touched my daughter and I said, well, this lady, the woman is a Grenadian, is 40-something years. Oh my goodness, thank you all so very much for coming. I really want to thank firstly the members, the panelists, my goodness. Obviously the amount of time that you had is never going to do justice to what you have inside of you that you can give. But it is a panel discussion. So we do appreciate so much you accepting the call to come to this session. I also do want to say that because we have 3 other such events planned, who knows? We do take so much to what you have said. Thank you so much, each of you, for coming. The moderator, you have done such an able job. Thank you so much for gracing us with your presence and for consenting to come. Oh yes, yes, please stand there. We do want to thank as well those who contributed with questions. If you didn't do that, then it would not be a panel discussion. Really, yeah, we do need the input. I do want to thank especially, though I may not have had that point until this lady again. Miss, can I please have your name? This lady thing is beginning to sound disrespectful. Pardon? Cheryl. Right. So thank you very much, Miss Curtin. You know why? Because you were bold enough, brave enough, and honest enough to let us know as a CCG one thing we can do to ensure that the next event becomes better. Thank you for being very open and letting us, for real. We really appreciate it. Thank you very much as well to all of you who came out. We know that we do have viewers online, but we also thank you for joining us. Tomorrow, God's will, during what is usually the CCG's hour on the Good News Catholic Network, this will be replayed as well, so there will be some publicity. We are going to say at this time though, so I'm going to put it as a thank you, but it's really a call for sponsorship. Because the next 3 events, the next 3 panel discussions, for it to be able to get the kind of publicity that we know it needs, it will take some sponsorship. So those of you who are here and will consider assisting us, we will be very appreciative of you coming on board. You can get in touch with us at the CCG. All right? For those of you who came and stayed, that's a big thing to have stayed to the end. Thank you so very much for coming. We also, and it's not that I'm leaving any particular individual for last or first, it's just that I will end up with a very long sentence if I put everybody on the same as number 1. So we do want to thank our technicians for coming, the team from the Good News Catholic Network. It is great to have Dwayne and his team on board. Thank you so much for coming out and for being here. We cannot leave out at all the Presbyterian community. Reverend James, yes, you might be part of the CCG, but we thank you now, not as part of the CCG, but as the Presbyterian community for allowing us to use your beautiful facilities, as well as for your technician and everyone who would have come out, all right? It really was a pleasure. I am hoping, dear goodness, that I did not leave out anyone. Of course, the committee and the CCG's whole well, it's not just the committee, but the whole body. We know that we have all worked together to ensure that today become the day that it was. Thank you so much again. And can you just stand with me as we say a brief word of prayer and we leave. Father, we did not leave you out because we know we have to thank you. and because we know we have already set in place to thank you for such a wonderful day, evening of fellowship that you have given to us. As a people, Lord, we understand that even as a ministry, as churches coming together, as the Conference of Churches in Grenada, Lord, that you have indeed given us the part to play, to stand firm, causing your name to be glorified in this nation. And so, Father God, as we have come together as a people, Lord, led in this particular case by the CCG, we pray, oh God, that as we go forward into this year's celebration and remembrance and all of that concerning our nation's independence, that, Lord, you are going to give us that which it takes individually and corporately as a nation, Lord, to be able to go forth and do that which you have given to us to do as a nation. That, Lord, as a people who are indeed resilient, we will understand that our resilience does not come because we are so bright, but it is simply because you, O God, have given to us what many have not been able to see that you have also given to them, which is grace, which is togetherness, which is the ability indeed, because of your grace, that we can actually stand together. Lord, we have indeed done a lot of things as a nation and as a people, Lord, that when we look back at it, we would say we shouldn't have. But the wonderful thing about your grace is that it continues to keep us. Father, and so we thank you for grace for the past 50 years as a nation. Lord, as we leave this place tonight and as we look forward to what you are going to use us all to do in our different spheres, we pray, oh God, that your mercy and grace will continue to cover and to go with us. Lord, we thank you for journeying mercies as we leave. In Jesus' mighty name, amen. God bless all and be safe on your way. Reverend James.
If I take time and I write down all the things that I love on my island, best believe my list gon' be like 5 miles long. Best believe it's love that makes me sing this song.
The cleanest breeze on the waters,
Friendly people meet in every corner. Togetherness and love is what we stand for. We stand for.